About a new law expanding the human rights ordinance to include gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people in Jacksonville.
It's not too much you can do about it based on the 19 when they vote.
If I was going to have a sign myself today and hold it up, it would say, love thy neighbor, period. I mean, it just really comes down to that for me.
First, a former member of Congress delivering comments to the local Public Policy Institute, Gwen Graham's thoughts on Florida and the nation on This Week in Jacksonville. And thank you so much for joining us today. And now that an expanded human rights ordinance is the law here in Jacksonville, we're taking a closer look at how the city plans to enforce those protections for the LGBT community and protecting them from discrimination. Mayor Curry also responded to some questions about why he did not sign the new law approved by City Council to protect gays, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender citizens from discrimination. It became law without his signature. There is still a lot of reaction about the passage of the HRO amendment, both good and bad. And you're going to hear this morning from interested parties. We'll hear from them in just a moment. For right now, Mayor Curry says he's ready to move on to other issues. Hemming Park, the rest of the week, didn't show the signs of celebration like Tuesday night when people were dancing in the street after the city council voted to approve the HRO expansion. Mayor Curry wasn't one of those on hand. In fact, he says he was at home with his family having a Valentine's Day dinner.
I was watching it before I left. I did not see the final vote because my wife was in the kitchen. I had walked into the living room and she said, dinner is ready. Turn off the TV. And get in here.
But what the mayor did was have his staff return the bill immediately to council without his signature, making it law. He told reporter Jim Biggett the reason he didn't sign it is because the mayor doesn't really believe the law is needed.
Don't you think that would have brought more of a closure by signing that bill?
Jim, it's closed. It's closed. It's law. It's over.
Would you support a citizens referendum on this?
It's over. It's closed. Let's get back to fighting crime in this city.
Councilman Tommy Hazuri stood behind the expansion from the start. The former mayor says he's glad Mayor Curry did what he did to get it into law so quickly.
I don't think you're going to see an abundance or an overabundance of complaints. I could be wrong. We had, a lot of people didn't complain before because there's no law to stand on.
And a reminder to you, this law is only for Jacksonville, does not affect the beaches, which have their own HRO ordinance. All right, so joining us this morning for a roundtable discussion on the issue, Dan Merkin and Reverend Claire Chance, who fought for the amendment, Raymond Johnson and Shirlene Davis, who both opposed expansion of the HRO. And I appreciate your time, your willingness to talk about this. So reaction on the pro-HRO side certainly has been one of excitement. I want to hear from each of you, your reaction now that we're a few days removed. Reverend?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I think my feelings are summed up by the words in that news story saying that people are protected against discrimination. Because to me, this is not about LGBTQ. This is not about alphabet soup. This is about people who just want to live their lives and be treated like anyone else. And I am overjoyed in Jacksonville that another group of people will feel safe from prejudice that could limit their lives.
And give me your response.
Yeah, having heard from many people, I mean, so many people I know from the LGBT community and our friends and allies are just, this is a moment of hope for them. I know many people who have been in this community have felt for a long time that their voices haven't been heard, that they haven't been full participants in the community because they didn't feel they were protected to do that. And I think this sends a clear signal that, Jacksonville wants people to feel included. They want to encourage the full spectrum of Jacksonville to be able to participate in every activity that the city has to offer.
I appreciate it. Shirlene Davis and Raymond Johnson, obviously you came to the whole process of the last couple of months and even much longer before then saying you were opposed to this. Tell me your reaction, Mr. Johnson.
Well, I think there's several things that your listening audience needs to know. You started by saying that this is law. Technically, this is not law until the 10-day period has been reached or the next city council meeting. And there's been a lot of discussion of the religious exemption. The problem with the religious exemption is it's just really false because it is for an entity. And as an individual, I still cannot live out my faith and my conscience. So with Mr. Merkin, I'd like to mention something that you had said during a news interview the other day. You had quoted that our hope was to leave in place the strongest protections possible. And so the attorney for your group, Jimmy Midgett, had wrote this bill. And it was so bad, Kent, that the Scott Wilson, the city councilman, had to introduce an amendment just to simply remove prison time for Christians simply trying to live out their faith.
So let's
That's
get into some of the
totally false.
details here.
First of all, that particular piece of the ordinance code already existed for the 9 protected classes that were already there before this was added. That was already there. So he removed it for all 11 protected classes.
We're still talking about jailing Christians for living their moral conscience and not participating in things.
So
that is no longer there.
Let's dive into that kind of element in just a moment. I want to make sure, Ms. Davis, I give you a chance. Shirley Davis, what's your reaction been in these days following the passage of this amendment?
My concern is privacy, rights, and also safety, for women and for little girls. As a Christ follower, we are commanded to love everybody, and we do. I love the LBGT community, but I don't agree with their theories. And I feel like this law is forcing their theories for me to accept it. And I don't accept it,
I appreciate that. So I've heard some of the conversation certainly has been about values, if you will. And I've heard some of that language. It's forcing certain values on us. So let's talk about this. I think certainly those of you who are here today saying, hey, we are part of a Christian community and we need to be able to, have our viewpoint heard. Let me ask about this. Isn't this something where you're saying you need to legislate morality if you think the homosexual lifestyle is something that is a moral question? You're saying let's legislate this. Am I wrong on that?
Ken, as a clergy person, I would love to respond to that because I too am a Christ follower. We have a lot more in common than we have in difference, to be honest with you. But here's the thing. You can believe whatever you want. I wouldn't try to convince you that the homosexual lifestyle was something you should adopt, accept, teach your children. I would never tell you that, even if that's what I believe. You have a right to your own moral beliefs that are informed by your faith. I understand that. Mine are too. But here's what I would hold you accountable for as a Christian. And I'm speaking if you were part of my congregation, and you're not. So I don't mean it. Don't mean to sound pejorative. But I would hold you accountable as a Christian for the way you behave, not what you think. You don't have to think it's okay. But I would ask, as you say, you are a loving person, which is very clear. You're a loving person and want to be kind and accepting, although you disagree. Continue to disagree. That's not a problem. But treat people equally. Allow people to live in an equal way in your community. That's what I was supporting the HRO to achieve, not to force anything down your throat.
So in regard to my question about are you trying to legislate morality, well, that's what legislation does in so many cases, right? It says here's the standard of how we behave. So, Mr. Johnson, maybe, or
let me
Davis,
respond.
how does that not get to what you want? You want people treated fairly, but you're saying somehow this protection for this class, adding protection to this class, is forcing values on you.
Let's respond to the pastor. The bottom line is, for the vast majority of Christians and Christian theologians, I'm sorry, but our guest is just completely wrong on the moral stance of this issue. This is historically unbiblical to support an agenda of sin. But I want to bring this conversation back.
Now, what she's saying, though, is supporting a standard of treating people with respect, even if you, to your point, even if you believe their lifestyle is sin, that's separate from treating them in a way that doesn't discriminate. Am I wrong on that?
Well, here's the thing, though. We're using discrimination in as an African American, as a Black person in America. I take offense to trying to come under those same standards of discrimination that my people went through. We were whipped. We were beaten. Our children were taken. We were hung. we were spit on, we were hosed down, our churches were burned, we weren't allowed to go to the same schools, use the same bathrooms. And that I can't wake up one morning and say, I identify with a white person and have something miraculously changed. If you identify with being a woman on a particular day, you can go in the restroom with little girls and women and expose yourself. I'm thinking of privacy and I'm thinking of safety. I'm thinking of opening the door to pedophiles, registered sex offenders, to just home in on a community like this and just take advantage of a law.
That's a concern for you.
That is yes.
Understood.
Definitely.
So I want to make sure, and what I told you, I wanted to be balanced, to make sure everybody got a chance to speak. Mr. Johnson, you wanted to say something to the mayor, and Mr. Merkin, I don't want to keep you out. So, Mr. Johnson, your point to Mayor Curry at this juncture,
Yes,
and then we'll wrap up.
If I had the chance to talk to the mayor, I would look at the camera today and tell him, as far as the mayor is concerned, we know that you have refused to take the stand that you should by telling the homosexual lobby to hit the road. However, Mayor Curry is a conservative mayor, and that we know that he has a further statewide political aspirations. So let me take a moment to directly talk to Mayor Curry. Mayor, you told our pastors that you would veto an HRO. In fact, I have here in writing a email where you said that you would veto had you been mayor, you would have vetoed the 2012 HRO. And so you're, as the mayor and the former chairman of the Republican Party of Florida, feel that your refusal to sign this law is sending a clear signal to Republican and elected officials across the state.
I'm running out of time here, so I apologize. I need to cut you off there. If he said he was going to veto an HRO in 2012, it's different than the HRO.
But the bottom line is we're
Here's
asking
what I
the
know.
mayor to veto
And
the
if you
law.
would wrap it up.
I will wrap it up beautifully. The city council heard deliberation on this for years. The city council voted on a 12-6 supermajority vote that they accepted the arguments that were made by the LGBT community, the business community, the civic leaders, the faith leaders.
200 faith leaders.
200 faith leaders, over 700 businesses in support of our coalition, and they voted on a 12-6 vote to update this ordinance, and they rejected all of those other arguments that were presented.
So it sounds like we could keep talking. I know people across Jacksonville and even surrounding counties and in the state are talking about it, but I appreciate hearing your concerns, your questions, the reasoning behind all of this, and obviously it's a pretty big moment or week for the city of Jacksonville. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So from a politically famous family, Congresswoman Gwen Graham is joining us next on This Week in Jacksonville. Stay with us.